Well, here we are again. Now, this is not the best way to continue with the book. We've gone from explanations and now we're moving up to information reports, called reports this time, which again is exactly the same thing. So, Unit 7, page 211. So if you want to turn to that, we'll have a quick look at the introduction. Nice to see you back. I thought you were dead.
And, I thought you were a semi-sentient cousin of a chimpanzee that inexplicably mated with a donkey.
Touché. Okay, so unit outcomes. By the end of this unit, you should be able to listen to take notes. This book is so basic. Read and understand a variety of information reports, which I know you can already do because the previous chapter did well, I don't know that you could actually do it, but you should be able to do it. Use grammatical features associated with reports. We'll have to check out your monthly test to see how that goes. Use language for comparison and contrast to show cause and effect. Present a news report. Oh, interesting. We might be able to do that. Verify information. There's almost nobody left on earth that can do that. Use tables, diagrams, graphs, and illustrations in a report. Okay, very, very brief overview on this. Page 212, overview. Reports provide factual details about a specific subject. Now, things have changed so much in the last few years. Now we have fact checkers who are continually proved to be completely lying. So it's a very, very weird situation. We're in a time, a lot of people are calling this a post-fact environment. So we've gone beyond facts. We've gone beyond the time where facts actually prove things. And now it's nonsense. It's like last year, when I had more time during the lockdowns, we did a section on a Russian called Yuri Bezmenov. He left the Russia. He was a KGB spy. And he left Russia, he defected to Canada. And he went on TV, wrote a book, and explained how Russia was planning to take over the United States. And one of the key things that they were planning to do was demoralize. Now that doesn't mean to remove your passion. They're talking about literally removing your morality. And we can see this all around us. This is what's happening to America. They're being demoralized. And if you look at Marxism, which communism is based on, one of the first things they do is remove religion, because religion is a moral basis. They remove your morals. So without your morals, all you care about is yourself. You don't have any moral connection to your society, to your fellows, to anything else. And that makes you very, very vulnerable to control because you're only thinking about yourself. Selfish people are the weakest people because they're basically functioning at the level of a baby. A small child will be selfish because it has to be to survive. And as we get older, we become more and more selfless as we connect ourselves with other people. People who don't get to that stage are mentally ill. Selfish people are mentally ill. They're basically infants all their lives, and that's what they want because infants are very, very simple to control. So this was the plan: demoralization. Now, if we have a look at this this man who calls himself Leah, this swimmer. I've all heard this story lately. This man called I don't know what his name was when he was a man, identifies as a woman. He was something like 400th swimmer in the world, and now he's the #1 female swimmer in the world. He identified as a woman, grew his hair long or wore a wig, decided to swim against women, of course, destroyed them, got to #1. If you actually watch the video, and it is available on YouTube, you can hear the whole audience booing this man because he's not a woman and he shouldn't be competing against women. That makes no sense. It would be like having me competing against people half my size in a race to be tallest. It doesn't make any sense. I'm completely in a different class. We have to compare things to themselves. We have to compare apples to other apples. We can't compare apples to oranges. But the reason that this is happening is because of demoralization. So we've removed the moral core, the moral foundation that these acts are supposed to be based on. It wouldn't be possible for this situation to arise if people cared about other people. This Leah person would not be able to function as a female swimmer if we all cared about the other women swimmers and about fairness. If we cared about fairness, this would never have happened in the first place. But we've removed the moral core. So this swimmer only cares about success, didn't make it as a man, has cheated to do it as a woman, and obviously has come first. And it just proves that these people who see themselves as opposites of what they really are mentally ill and are basically moralless. And we see the same thing in Ukraine. There was another news article about a week ago where people who identify as transgender are crying because they're having to stay and fight. Because at the moment, Ukraine's at war. Men are required, men of a certain age, I think it's between 20 and 50, are required to stay in the country and fight. And these transgenders are saying, well, I identify as a woman, so I should be allowed to leave. And the Ukraine is quite rightly saying, no, you're a man, you have to fight. And America is trying to make out that this is wrong in some way. But of course, it's absolutely correct. And what you've got is people using excuses to get out of doing something they don't want to do. I mean, fighting in a war is distasteful. I wouldn't do it either. I mean, however, the Ukraine war is a lot more clear-cut than most. Not as clear-cut as you might think, but it is a clear-cut case of the Ukrainian people being faced with an overwhelming, villainous attack from another country. So yeah, it's great to support the Ukrainian people, not the Ukrainian government. It's a lot more muddy than you might think. Interestingly, there was a movie, Ukraine on Fire, from 2016, a documentary about this and how it was going to change the world, and that's been covered up. Google are trying to block that now because it explains that this was always planned and was coming. Nothing you see on the media is true, and that's why we have these fact checkers to try and convince you that facts are no longer facts. They're trying to tell you, oh, this isn't true, even though we all know it is. And this is very dangerous. The thing in Ukraine, it looks very clear-cut. It looks like Putin's crazy, he's attacked Ukraine, and that's what they're trying to make it look like. And it isn't that at all. It's Ukraine is very resource-rich, very rich. There are bioweapon labs where they've been making very dangerous biotechnology, and that's American-backed. And the Biden family all sit on the chair of the boards of the energy and oil companies in the Ukraine. So this has always been a setup to move the resources from the Russian domain into the Western domain. So they're trying to get the resources out of Ukraine. They weren't able to do it with an invasion because it was Russian territory. So what they've done is they've kind of nudged the Ukraine to go for independence and then to join the UN and the European Union, in which case then they have the rights and access to the resources. And it looks like they're the heroes. And of course, this is all a scam. And the people paying the price are the Ukrainian people who are dying for it. And this is how it is. This is why you have to be very careful. And this is what I mean when we live in a post-fact world, because the media likes to spin all these things around. And don't go thinking that any one country's better or worse at this. At least in somewhere like China, where you have no free speech and you're just lied to and no one's allowed to speak up. And that's a terrible, terrible situation. But it isn't really that much different in America. It really, really isn't. Because people are demoralized. They have no morals anymore. They're selfish, they're lazy, they're arrogant, and they've given up on a moral core. And that's very dangerous. And this is the outcome. So reports provide factual details. And again, fact, what is a fact? Nowadays, you can't just trust somebody else to be saying it to verify a fact. Somebody said once, if you've got two journalists and one of them says it's raining outside and one of them says it's sunny outside, it's not up to you to look at all the information and draw a conclusion. It's up to you to stick your head out of the window and find out for yourself. And if you're not finding out for yourself, you are basically really of no value. If you're not looking into these things for yourself and finding out the truth, what are you as a human being? You're what we call politically a repeater. So all you do is repeat information you've been given from somebody else without validating or finding out any truth in these things for yourself. And finding out the truth is very easy these days. It's all over the place. Google doesn't even censor it because they know you're not looking for it. So there's no one to blame but yourself. You need to be self-reliant. So reports are meant to provide facts, but it's up to you to be very careful about filtering those facts and making sure indeed that they are facts. Facts are items of information that are known to be true. Well, again, I mean, you've got on American TV saying that there are 70 odd genders, and that's supposed to be a fact. Now that is presented as a fact because a lot of people believe in it. So by this, facts are items of information that are known to be true. So a lot of people would say that there are more than two genders, and that's a fact. So that doesn't really fit. What they're saying here was many years ago when excuse me, when these things make more sense. These days, you have to be much more careful about what a fact is. Now, I think to qualify a fact, it has to be provable beyond the shadow of a doubt. It needs to be proven. You need to be able to get evidence to support it. So we need to go further than this explanation these days. There needs to be evidence to support it. So look at the gender spectrum. Where is the evidence to support the idea that there are multiple genders? There is no evidence, and that's the problem. There is evidence that there are only two genders because it's a complete biological split, male and female, which is the way it's always been. That has scientific evidence to support it. There's no evidence to support the opposite because it's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's all about demoralizing and removing your core principles so that you can be reprogrammed. And when somebody has been reprogrammed, they will fight tooth and nail to protect the programming. And that's the way it is. That's the way humans function. So it's a nasty little trick, but it works. And it's up to you. They can be checked for accuracy. Well, yeah, you can check for accuracy now, but Google is so corrupt that you have to be very careful what you believe. I mean, Google is partly run by Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk, most people think he's a bit of a hero. Since COVID started, he is the billionaire that has profited the most from COVID. And we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars he has made from COVID. That's not possible unless you knew that this was coming, unless you were in on it. There had to be a reason why he's been able to make this much money. Bill Gates only made a few billion off of this. Elon Musk made hundreds of billions. So there's a serious problem here. And Elon Musk is somebody that started out with PayPal and was actually fired for incompetence. He was got rid of because he was trying to use Microsoft software to base the thing on, and the other people in the team were trying to use Linux because Linux is more reliable. He was pushing for Microsoft, so they got rid of him. So he kept his shares, but he's an idiot. I mean, the Loop, the Hyperloop thing, he sold that to another idiot billionaire, Richard Branson, and their company has fired half of its staff in the last 2 weeks because it's never going to work. And they knew it was never going to work, but they've secured tens of millions of dollars of investment. It's a way of getting rich. These people who control Google and therefore all the information flow, they can prove anything by just putting enough websites on there. And unfortunately, a failure of human beings is we believe what we hear often enough. If you hear it over and over again, eventually you'll accept that it must be true. I've used this analogy before, but there was a psychological experiment where people were set up in a loop in a classroom, and they were played a number of drum beats. I think it was 10 beats. So the guy hit a drum 10 times, and then went to the first one. How many drum beats did you hear? Of course, he said 11. And as it went around the class, everyone was saying 11. And the person at the end who was being experimented on, only one person didn't know. Eventually, he always would say 11. By the time he's heard 11 repeated so many times, he's convinced himself that, yeah, I was wrong. These people aren't idiots. I'm the idiot. I've got it wrong. I've counted the wrong number. And they convince themselves that they're wrong, and it was 11. And they just go along with the crowd in every instance. So hearing these things, these lies repeated often enough, they become facts. And this was something that's been warned about for decades. George Orwell wrote about this. He said, the more a culture moves towards lies, the greater their hatred towards people who tell the truth will be. So be very careful of what you believe. A report presents what is already known to exist or what has already happened. So a report will basically take the information about something that we know is true and will present it to you in a way so that you can understand it. So if we were looking at the history of Elon Musk, we would present it as a report. We would stick to the facts as far as we could. We'd try and verify everything, and we'd try and make it into a semi-entertaining list. A report can be an account that is based on the research for a particular topic. I don't think it can be anything else. A report can be an account that is based on the research for a particular topic. Well, that's what it is. A report is basically an account of research based on a particular topic. So that's what it is. I think that's a horrible sentence. Data is collected from various sources. See what I mean? This book is terrible. Data is collected from various sources and then presented in a particular way according to the requirements of the report. So if we were doing an information report, a presentation about something humorous, we might go with a much more laid-back approach. If we were going to talk about the war in Ukraine, we would probably go with a much more serious, strong approach. If we were talking about Agent Orange, war atrocities done by America to the Vietnamese people during the Vietnam War. Again, we would go with a much more severe approach. What we wouldn't do is show pictures of children injured by chemical weapons that were used by the Americans in Vietnam War, and we wouldn't put clown music in the background and present it as a joke. That would be wrong. The audience wouldn't accept it. It just wouldn't work. So you have to find a way to present this material that is appropriate to the material. So you have to find a way to connect with the audience. And it's very important that you do. If you are trying to present something that's light-hearted, if you were going to talk about a hobby and you were to present it in too serious a way, then your audience won't connect with it. They'll lose interest in what you're saying, they'll zone out, and they'll either switch to something else or whatever, but you'll lose them. You have to be appropriate to your audience. The aim of the report is to inform, not persuade. Now that's very important. If we get time, we'll look at persuasive text next. We're a little ahead of ourselves. We'll see what happens. You're looking to inform, not persuade. Persuade means to bring you around to your way of thinking. Now, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to give you information and give you both sides of the information so that you can make an informed choice about what you believe. Now, you'll notice this never happens in the news anymore. It's always told from a certain perspective. It uses emotive language. It tries to tell you how evil one side is, how great the other side is. And this is why we've got the war in Ukraine, where everybody supports Ukraine and nobody questions it. Now, I'm not trying to say that the Ukrainian people don't deserve our support. I absolutely believe that they do. But I also think there's something very, very not right about this. The entire European Union has suddenly got together behind the Ukraine, and that's very unusual. And this is not the first time that Russia's invaded Ukraine. It's not. There's a lot of political movement here. Something's happening. Something weird is happening. My opinion is this is about control of the resources. This is about changing the rules about cryptocurrency, because Russia's trying to move towards a crypto model because they've sanctioned all of their finances. America is talking about bringing in new regulations for Bitcoin to stop them. I don't think it's to stop them. I think this is about controlling Bitcoin because it's a $1 trillion industry and the governments don't have control of it. They're already talking about banning Bitcoin. For what reason? I don't know, because there's no legal reason to ban other people's exchanges of currency. So I think it's partly about that. I think it's about removing Putin. I think he's being got rid of because I think he's outlasted his usefulness. But we'll see. We'll see who's right. But these things happen. I mean, you struggle these days to find a news report that's actually unbiased, that just gives you the information. Even when you look at counterculture news, maybe on YouTube or something, or BitChute, where you look up information and try and understand it, even then it will be very biased towards the opposite side. It's interesting at the moment, America's run by the liberals, and the liberals are batshit crazy. They're insane. You've got Biden running America, and he's literally can't string a sentence together. The man is completely senile, shouldn't be running a tap, let alone America. It's crazy. And then you've got the conservatives on the other side, and right now the conservatives, the Republicans, sound like they make sense, but that's only in comparison to the left wing. They're just as bad. They always were. They're all just as bad as each other. But at the moment, they sound like they make much more sense. But you've got a problem when you've got a bipartisan system. It's in America anyway. It's designed so that it tricks you into thinking you've got a choice. You've got no choice when you've got to decide who controls you. The real choice is to not be controlled. And if you don't have that choice, then you're a slave. So make sure that the report works and it gives information. It doesn't try and persuade. You are not trying to give anybody else your opinion. We don't want to hear your opinion. We want information, and that's it. Unbiased facts. The following examples of some types of reports. So these are the kind of places you'd look from. Now, news reports. Now, the world has changed since this book came out. I don't know how many of you watch TV for news reports. I don't. I haven't done that for years because the BBC used to be the envy of the world, but I'm going back 30, 40 years. Now it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. News reports on the BBC are ridiculous. CNN is constantly being sued for lying. That's an American corporation. News on TV is probably a waste of time now. I don't think many people believe what they see on the news anymore. at least not many people who have any kind of educational certificates. These days, news has moved to the internet, so we've got websites, we've got YouTube channels. YouTube channels are dangerous. I mean, and that sounds ridiculous from someone who's literally giving you this from YouTube, but it's so easy to set up a YouTube channel. All I do is I log in, I generate an email address without any confirmation of my identity. That lets me set up a YouTube channel. I confirm it by getting a phone number to my phone, and that's it. I can say whatever I want on YouTube. And if I say the right things, I'll never get blocked. If I support Biden, I will never have anything to worry about. As long as I'm woke, they will let me do whatever I want to do. And that's insane. However, on a free speech platform, both sides should be allowed to present any information they want and let the informed audience make the choices for themselves. That is not what we see. That's not what happens, and that's why I don't like it. So news reports, firstly, you've got to be careful who you trust. I don't think there are any unbiased news media outlets left. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think there are any left. They all have an agenda. And when someone's got an agenda, they're not trustworthy anymore. So newsletters, I don't think they exist. They do on the internet, but I don't think anybody gets sent newsletters anymore. We're literally talking about an update list on a piece of paper that was sent through the post. I don't think anybody does that anymore. So I think you'd be looking at mail shots. Maybe if you signed up to updates from a website or something. Some people still do that. It's hard to imagine where people might do that from, because these days everybody has social media accounts and the social media updates for you. So newsletters, I think, are pretty much dead. Reference books, those still exist. I don't know if you're aware of this, but what they are is a dead tree pressed out into the form of something we call paper, and then information is written on it permanently. And when you fold over the paper and go back, it's still there. So books are actually very, very useful. The reason books are useful is if you go inside the front page, excuse me, got an itch, there will be the date of publication, and it won't change. You can look back in this book, it'll be published 20 odd years ago, maybe less. So you'll be able to go back and look at this information and see how it hasn't changed and see where we got those references from. Because at the moment, the internet likes to change things every few days. So having a solid reference is very important. Parts of textbooks, well, I agree with that. I mean, if we look at this textbook, some of it has reports in it, some of it doesn't. But yeah, most textbooks would have some degree of reports in them somewhere, because that's the point. Parts of science reports, that's interesting. Parts of science reports. Science should be literally nothing but this. It should be nothing but the facts and no persuasion. So there shouldn't be any part of science that isn't this. But it's interesting that they say that, because I actually agree with that. Parts of social science reports and science reports are, a lot of it is nonsense these days. I mean, well, you look at America, when we've literally got the gender spectrum and people are arguing about climate change. I said, well, where's the science behind it? Oh, scientists agree. And that's meant to dismiss you as a normal person. But scientists have said this. What scientists? Tell me what scientists, tell me what papers, tell me what reports this has come from. And no one can do that, because they just simply trust to repeat what they've heard. Social science reports, yeah. Social science is, it's almost a pseudoscience. Social science is like psychology, sociology, things like that, where they're based on the observation of human beings. It's very, very difficult to get human beings to behave in a certain way reliably time after time after time. So they tend to drift towards almost pseudoscience, because I could get a load of people from this country to behave in a certain way with a certain stimulus. English people in England would behave in a different way. Australians would behave in a different way. So culture plays a big part of this. So it's very difficult to boil this down to what really is our human behavioral guidelines versus what really isn't, and what is basically just cultural programming. Weather reports, not much facts in weather reports. Interestingly, that was a joke from when I was a kid back in the 80s. People would joke about how bad the weather report is, and all these years later we still haven't got a science where we can actually look at the weather and accurately predict it. We still live in a world where the best weather predicting science is as good as a pine cone on a string. What does that tell you? Police reports? Well, I've had enough dealings with the police over the years to know that police reports aren't always factually based. I had a friend back in the UK. Well, his girlfriend was my friend, actually. She's the mother of several of my godchildren, and he went to prison for murder, for killing an old woman. And what actually happened was he was a low-level burglar because he was on drugs. And I didn't really know him. I'd only met him a few times. He seemed all right, harmless when he wasn't on drugs. When he took a load of drugs, he'd go out and steal something to get more drugs. He was in a downward spiral, and he was from a bad family. He didn't have a great start in life. He seemed all right. He never ever hurt anybody, but he got sentenced. He did 10 years for murder. And what actually happened is he was on parole. He'd been arrested. He was allowed out of prison early on parole. And he was in a parole meeting when two of his friends mugged an old lady and she died of a heart attack. And because he wouldn't give any information, because he didn't know anything, he wasn't there, he was an accessory before the fact, which meant he went down for 10 years for murder. That's insane. When he got out, one of the policemen gave him a cigarette. He smoked it and threw the butt out the window. And they all jumped up and went, "No, don't do that." And the reason for it was what they do is they would have collected the butt with his fingerprints on it and then dropped it in a house and said, "Ah, we found a cigarette with your fingerprints on it in the house, so we're going to arrest you for burglary." And that's exactly what they intended to do. They even admitted that to him. School reports, same thing applies. Fitness reports, same thing applies. Television documentaries, well, television documentaries have very little basis in fact these days. There are some very good independent documentaries, very good, which is again very much like YouTube. Anyone can make these things now, and they will slowly spread around. There was a very good one, high budget, Super Size Me, where a guy ate nothing but McDonald's for an entire month just to see what would happen, and it didn't go well. He nearly died. Just to make a point. So he had it for breakfast, lunch and dinner for a whole month, 30 days. A very likable guy, very good in interviews. He was very fit when he started exercising, very mentally healthy. He put on a load of weight. He was starting to get depression. His liver was in a horrible state. He nearly died after it. So it was awful. And it just goes to show the danger of eating this stuff too much, which is exactly what happens in America. People eat this stuff to the exclusion of all else. So documentaries like that still have value. They don't make the TV because they don't show what is really going on. They don't show both sides of the argument. They only show something that maybe the people in control don't want us to look at. Another very good one was something funny happened on the way to the moon. And it's a documentary that was going to be on television. It was going to be screened, and it was about the moon landings and how they were fake. And it proved they were fake by having literal footage of the lunar lander in low Earth orbit while it was supposed to be on the moon. So they had footage of the astronauts faking it from inside the capsule. At one point they were taking a photograph of Earth, and they had a piece of cardboard with a circle cut out of it, and they were holding it up to the window to make Earth look like it was further away. It was very good, and it had the dialogue of them laughing about playing these tricks and doing all this stuff. And it proved that we never went to the moon. At least the Americans never went to the moon. And it was going to be put on TV, but it was pulled at the last minute and it went into obscurity. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Look it up. I've got it on my hard drive if anyone wants a copy. So documentaries like that have value, but you're not going to see them on TV. There was another very good one, and I've got it, but it's a horrible copy. It's almost unwatchable, about the predators that we have in control of America. These people are predators preying on children, and it was a documentary about that. Again, it was banned, and all you need to know is the Maxwell trial. Giselle or Ghislaine or whatever her name was, Maxwell. She was organising these parties on this island with children involved. And she's gone to prison, and the records are sealed, and we don't know one person that used her services because all that information has been held. We know that the Clintons were there, we know Bill Gates was there, but all of that's been quietly tucked under the carpet. Not one of them will ever face charges. So television documentaries, very, very highly controlled, and birth notices, arguably slightly more accurate. It's very difficult to fake a birth notice. Not impossible by any means. So this is a brief overview of what we're looking at, and facts versus opinions. We won't go into this structure for long reports. I mean, this is all basic stuff, and we've done it before, and we've done it to death. Language, again, it's the same old thing, and it's the same thing as last time as well. So we won't do any of this. We're going to leave Monsters of the Mountain for next time. Yeah, we'll leave that for next time. So what I've done is, if you go to Google Class, I've given you a short documentary, a short report to watch, and I want you to watch it and then decide if it's persuasive or fact-based, and I want you to give me a reason why you think that it's that. Okay, so have a look at Google Class. There's a link to another video, and I want you to decide if it's trying to persuade you, and if so, what is it trying to persuade you of, or is it fact-based, in which case, what is it trying to inform you about? Okay, thanks for listening.